Hello, Montana. Say it and it shall be so. The Grizzlies pick up a new cornerback transfer. The XFL reveals the names and logos of their 8 teams. And the Tour Championship starts tomorrow in the PGA. It is Tutel Nuanez and 102.9 ESPN Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris is at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula. Go check them out online at kurtzpolaris.com. Also on Highway 83 in Sealy. You want to go see them there, get the pontoon boats going? Oh, yeah, for sure. Kurtz Polaris. You can find us on the World Wide Web as well, 1029ESPN.com. There, you can listen live on the Listen Live tab. The stream is available thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. You can also pick up your phone and call us, 329-1899, 329-1899. That is your phone number. All guests join us via the Rankage Brothers RV phone line. Let's take a look at what we got on the show today. We are going to get into a little news that kind of broke technically during the show yesterday, and ironic that Coulter would have been talking about maybe a cornerback being a need or a question mark for the Montana Grizzly football team, and then no sooner as the words came out of his mouth than the word came down from the university that they have added Keenan Foster. Nope, Keenan Foster. Keenan Foster. He might be Kenyon. Who knows? But
it's Keenan.
Keenan Foster, and he comes from University of Texas El Paso, where he was a wide receiver and played actually for Brent Pease. So interesting there. So we'll get into some of that stuff. We will talk a little bit, not a lot, about the XFL, but more about logos and about the Osprey. Now I don't know. A lot of things have befallen the Osprey this season. You know, it's been crazy. But in theory, right, they're still supposed to have a new team name on the last day of the year, the last, home game of the year. My understanding is when they were going to unveil that. So I don't know if that's still happening, but we can have a little discussion about that. It is a Wing It Wednesday. You will call us for Wings to the Desperado Sports Tavern. In the spirit of the XFL, I have some non-NFL but professional football related questions for you today on the Wing It Wednesday. So we'll get to those. I got to talk to you a little bit about the Tour Championship. I know that not a lot of people, the golf is a tough sport to talk about when you're talking about sports talk radio. Not everybody's into it. This, though, is really interesting. We're not going to sit here and debate who's going to win the Tour Championship and all that kind of stuff. But the format and how they are doing this is really, really interesting. So we will get to that. We also, top of the hour, we will continue our NFL team-by-team series. You came in, you said, Ryan, I'm in a great mood. I want to do this for you. I want you to have a nice day today. So the Green Bay Packers it is. The Green Bay Packers it is today on the NFL Deep Dive, team by team, day by day as we go. And then, we'll get into some other stuff in the second hour as well. Beyond that, obviously, another Wing It Wednesday as well. So there you go. There's a look at the show. Of course, the second that we are about to go live on the air, my headphone pad falls off of the headphone ear, like the thing that goes over your ear. And now it's very awkwardly fitted to my head. I don't really have time to adjust it. I might try while you talk a little bit. But why does it got to happen like right when I'm putting the thing on? Because you have these headphones are I like the over the ear guy. I'm not the earbud guy. I like the over the ear. Mm-hmm. But it's just hard plastic under this thing. It's just got this little padded cover, and now I'm in tough shape. So anyway, there's my problem.
All this brings me joy.
It's an engineering issue. It's such a strange crutch, the headphones. Right when I first started doing this, I was doing like twice a week, 15 minutes a time with you and Tucker, just on the phone.
Yeah.
And I was just talking on my Bluetooth headphones or whatever. And then when I first started doing this in studio with you, I didn't use headphones for the first several months.
Which is why you could answer no questions from any caller.
And it's funny, though, because once you get into the headphones, then you become dependent on them.
It's so interesting because there's a lot of people who come in, if there's guests, and we got extra headphones for people who are in studio, and they're like, should I wear the headphones? Well, and usually I advise them not to, because when you are wearing the headphones and actually hearing your own voice in real time, it is it throws you off. Like, people don't deal with that well. But now that you do it all the time, if you don't have your headphones, you can't form a sentence. It goes the other way.
Friday, Mike Nugent in the studio. This wasn't going out over the air. Everybody else here heard it crystal clear, but there's whatever button. I don't know what the button is, but you get the delayed double audio.
Oh, yeah.
I had to throw the headphones out because I'm trying to, I already suck at the intro, and you're not here to steer the ship. And so I'm like trying to get us through all the ins and outs. And I was just like, yeah, I can't do it. I can't do it with the echo. Get these things out of here. And you could tell Mike was like, what's going on? Because this is only the second time ever doing the show. And he's like,
do we have a problem?
Do we have an issue? He throws his away too. And then we got it remedied. But it's a funny crutch. One of the most interesting parts about doing this job to me is, first of all, how terrified so many people are to speak in public. And this is very much like public speaking. And I never had a fear of public speaking.
Yeah.
But now when I go, I presented for the Kiwanis Club in Missoula a couple weeks ago, and it was phenomenal. It was so fun.
Yeah.
I love talking to all the people and having them ask you questions, and just kind of spreading the word of all the things that are going on in our sports community. But I was thinking to myself, it's so far beyond not nervous. It's just straight off the cuff, not even thinking about it.
Yep.
And so many people also say that they hate the sound of their own voice because of my job as a journalist, transcribing my own voice so often, as well as then now listening to myself talk into a microphone for, by the time we get done with all our production and everything, it's got to be close to 13 hours a week, right? I mean, we're talking a lot, podcasts and this,
sure.
and I don't even think about what my voice sounds like. It's an interesting way of sort of numbing yourself to what most people find horrifying.
Of getting over it. Well, here's the good news. I've only ever loved everything about myself. So, my voice, how I look on television, all of it. Just more of it.
Well, and now you're wearing your favorite shirt.
Myself in a loop. I know I got I've gotten some feedback. My sister saw this shirt for the first time and said, why did you dive into the Saved by the Bell closet?
This is another interesting factor, right? The short sleeve button up has become very en vogue.
Is that right?
But they are definitely way more catered towards the tall and long guys.
Right.
The burly guys like us, not necessarily as much. The short sleeve button ups,
broad shouldered. That's the nice way to say it.
Yeah.
Middle heighted people.
I still think that the funniest name submission we got for our potential names from the listeners, what did they say? Oh man, I got to remember what it was. It was like 2 tons of fun or something like that. And the explanation was, there's no way that you guys don't. Oh, it was something like about 2 bills. 2 bills and something, and the guy said, "There's no way either one of you guys weigh under 200 pounds, so we gotta go." And I say, "Yeah, no, we're not even close."
You're right about that. No, we are not. We are north of 2 bills. That is a fact. South of 3, though.
Hey,
for all the folks.
Okay, we're completely off the rails right now, but I gotta tell a really.
Every time you announce it, it makes it worse.
It's
just
funny.
Don't say it, just keep going.
It's funny.
I'd like to impersonate Coulter really quick before you get into this, Coulter. We're 8 minutes and 15 seconds in. We haven't talked a thing about sports yet.
Well, I got a sports story.
All right.
Yeah, a sports story.
All right, here we go.
That's what I was worried.
And I mean this all in jest, because I know that the young man is working hard, and I actually think he has one of the best chances to play of any true freshman for either the Bobcats or the Grizzlies this year. But there is a defensive tackle that plays for Montana State. His name is Tua Areta, and he is a very, very, very large young man. And the first, I guess it was the third day of camp, they had their conditioning test, and it was the Montana State did, and it was must watch in practice because Troy Anderson, he sprints as hard as he can during every conditioning drill, and it spurs on everybody else. And so by the time
he's the guy that makes me mad.
By the time Troy has dusted the whole team 13 times and he's running across the finish line backwards, egging everybody on with his fingers, then people start saying, okay, one of us has got to take this guy down. So then a couple guys started trying to go with him. But on the other side of this thing, Tua Areta, he is the conditioning test is not made for him. He is your prototype nose guard. So the conditioning was not going so well for Big Tua. But Montana State's roster had him listed at 6'3", 295. So after their first Saturday practice, Choate's up on the podium. Jeff Choate's up on the podium, and I say, Coach, I said, I got to ask you something. I don't need a comment on this or anything. I really got to know, just because I'm in the business of accuracy. I said, your big old boy in the middle, your big plug. I just don't think that he's weighing in at 295. And Joe said, "Oh yeah." He said, "I looked at that roster and said that's wrong by 100." He said, "Tua, get up there, get up on that scale." 398. And Joe said, "Okay, I want you to be.
He made him. He did.
He said, Tua, I want to know." He said because when he came on his recruiting visit, he was like 415, and he told him he has to get under 400, and so he got down to 398. And so then I asked Joe later on, and he said, "Oh man, fall camp, he's already lost like 15 more pounds. He's feeling svelte. He's under 380. He's making progress." But the guy's lost like 30 pounds, so like good for him. Hey. But I'm telling you what, though, I don't mean to make fun of the kid because he could play. And he's got, good luck blocking him. When they go 2s-on-2s, he was running with the 2s as a true freshman. When they go 2s-on-2s, Denver Crone is their backup center. Denver Crone's a walk-on from Augusta. He's a really tough kid, ranch kid, but he's only about 6'2", maybe 260, 265. Mm-hmm. So when you got 265 going against 385, advantage number 55.
What they call that is a double team. He's going against two
right.
people. Okay, it is. Let's keep going here with a little bit of college football, Coulter. Mentioned this off the top, but yesterday we spent a fair amount of time on the Grizzly football team specifically, and kind of the way the first part of their season sets up, and specifically the South Dakota game and what that game could mean heading into the UC Davis game. And if you weren't with us, podcast people, we won't rehash all of it here. But we talked about some of the specifics of this team, and you said, I know they played well last year by all accounts, but they also played well in virtue of people looking at the football team last season thought Montana is in complete trouble, desperate straits at cornerback. And they brought over, Justin Calhoun and, had a couple other guys step up, convert, and they played well. Those guys played well, especially considering that they weren't cornerbacks in some cases until last year, and now they're out there starting at the position. So, good for them to get up to speed quick for the coaches and the secondary coaches and so forth. But you said, look, just because they played, better than what people thought doesn't mean that's not still an area of concern potentially for the UM. And no sooner do you point out that position group specifically than all of a sudden a transfer is announced in Kenyon Foster from UTEP, 5'9", 165 pounds, not a big kid. He's also been a wide receiver, but they're pretty clear they're bringing him in to be a cornerback, to be part of that secondary. He did play at UTEP for Brent Pease in 2016 and 2017, and so he comes in, I think, he's just going to have 1 year of eligibility.
He's a graduate
right?
transfer,
yeah.
Yep.
So grad transfers coming in, and so obviously, you would never bring in a grad transfer that you didn't expect to play and have, at the minimum, a contributing role. What do you know, Coulter, here about Kenyon Foster, and what do you expect out of him as a corner and in that group?
Well, I've always thought that guys that come to either of the Montana schools as transfers, when they have a previous connection, a previous familiarity with either the program, the coaching staff, a player on the team, it always makes the transition a lot easier. Because I think that one of the things that's such a tough balancing act for FCS programs is that when you're dropping down from the FBS, so many of the guys that are doing it, they just consider it exactly like I just phrased it. You're dropping down. And I think that one of the biggest areas of trouble you can get into, no matter how talented you are individually, is if you think you're a big timer. Because if you come to the Big Sky Conference, there's a couple guys that are exceptions where they're so far athletically superior that it doesn't really take a lot of buy-in. Like a guy like Bo Sandlin, who came from the University of Miami and transferred to Montana State to play tight end. I mean, he's 6'5", 265. He ran a 4.6 on his pro day. He got drafted in the 6th round. There's not a lot of guys that can guard Bo Sandlin, period. It doesn't take a lot of buy-in or grind for him. But there is a ton of guys, I think, that when you fall out of favor at a mid-major FBS program, there's not that much difference. And in some cases, I don't even know if it's as good. And so I do think that it's having familiarity helps a lot. And when you look at Kenyon Foster, there's several different ties. He was recruited by Montana heavily coming out of high school. He's from Mill Creek, Washington, which is in the Seattle-Tacoma area. He was a Big Sky recruit, basically, coming out of high school. He was recruited heavily by Montana, Montana State, and Portland State. And then he decided he was going to take a chance and bet on himself and go to Florida A&M. That didn't work out because they had a coaching change. So he ends up at UTEP, walks on at UTEP, but then earns himself a scholarship. And he's a productive receiver. I mean, he caught 21 passes, caught a couple touchdowns. So he was in the mix. He was a guy that was in the rotation, getting a lot of playing time. And there he played for Brent Pease. Brent Pease was the wide receivers coach at UTEP for a couple years. So there's a connection there. And then those things kind of led him back to Montana. But I think that there is some coinciding with a roster spot availability. So you wonder if Montana's been talking to this guy for a little while, and maybe he had a little bit of delayed grad transfer admissions or something like that, because that seems to be a more common case these days when guys are trying to grad transfer. A lot of times the paperwork takes a long time to get through. But either way, Rayshawn Rowland and Cole Sane both left the team last week. That gives Montana an open scholarship because of Cole Sane, and then an open position at cornerback because Rayshawn Rowland was a walk-on cornerback. So this guy fills both those needs with one player. I'm just going to be so interested to see how a guy that spent the majority of his college career playing receiver transitions to corner. I just find it interesting that there's so many guys that are in that exact situation, whether you're talking about Justin Calhoun and Darian Nash, or you're talking about Kobe Eaton, who will probably be in the mix as a senior, especially with Josh Egbo out. That's one thing that we haven't talked about. Josh Egbo, who was expected to be probably Montana's third corner this year, he tore his ACL during spring football, and he posted about it on Instagram. That's how I know the injury was confirmed. He's been at practice. He's walking around. He's wearing a brace, so he's not on crutches. So he's farther along than if he would have happened right now. So he might come back, but that leaves a little bit of a gap in the depth chart as well. But then you have other guys too. Corbin Walker, for example, who's a highly recruited guy and a guy that I think most people think is one of Montana's out-of-state gems in this current class of freshmen. A lot of people would argue that his upside is higher at corner, but he was a more productive player to this point in his career as a receiver. I mean, he was the South Puget Sound League Offensive Player of the Year last year. So there's a lot of guys at Montana that have much more experience playing wide receiver. I don't necessarily know if that means that they don't have the true upside to play corner. We'll see. I do think Justin Calhoun has the most important characteristic you need to play corner in college football. He's
length.
And he's competitive. The mental part. He's got good length and he's got good speed. But the thing about Justin Calhoun is Justin Calhoun's a dog. Here's the thing. At this day and age in college football, especially in the Big Sky Conference, because there's going to be no proportional mismatch than any other position than wide receiver versus corner. Because corners now are at a premium because everybody, especially out west, the Big 12, Pac-12, everybody's running the spread. Everybody's throwing the ball. So everybody's recruiting corners at such a high level. I mean, you're seeing guys like Trayvon Strong be half scholarship players at Montana State and then go straight to Utah and be in the mix at Utah. So I think that if you can play at any sort of level now, you're getting recruited to the highest level as a corner. Whereas on the other side, there's so many receivers fall through the cracks. And you get guys like Cooper Kupp and Kendrick Bourne and Emmanuel Butler who are just so physically superior. Like when Emmanuel Butler was at his best, when he was healthy at NAU, you are not guarding that guy. There is no corner in the Big Sky that is going to guard that guy. There's none. And I think that's why it's important to have the mentality Justin Calhoun has, because Justin Calhoun is the type of guy where if he gets beat, he's going to get back up and want to go again. That's the hardest part to learn as a corner, I think, because if you get beat and then you go in the dumps, you're going to get beat over and over and over again.
One thing that really impressed me about Justin Calhoun last year was coming up from the offensive side of the ball, which, by the way, he maybe played both ways in high school, but he certainly played wide receiver in high school. Do you want to stick your nose in it defensively?
Right.
And go in and make a tackle and be the aggressor physically? And there's a lot of cornerbacks who are true cornerbacks that aren't really particularly excited about that aspect of what they do. They want to guard all day long. They want to pass break up. They can drag a guy down, but they don't want to come up and make a tackle in the run game, necessarily. But Justin Calhoun, he's in attack mode. And that is, bespeaks exactly what it is that you're talking about the competitiveness that he has, and I think you're absolutely right about that. Well, there you go. Kenyon Foster is in the program. It is worth noting too. You go, okay, Florida A&M and UTEP. How's he going to do coming to Montana, starting to play in October, November? But to your point, he's from Mill Creek. I mean, Mill Creek is north of Seattle. Obviously, it's not cold the way it's cold here, but he's plenty used to gray days and chilly and cool temperatures and all that kind of stuff. I would think that this would be more akin to what he's used to than Florida A&M and the University of Texas at El Paso.
And I'm pretty sure he came on a visit here too when he coming out of high school. So it's probably a place he remembered. And you don't want to rag on any programs, but the college experience in Missoula, Montana is significantly better than it is at the University of Texas, El Paso. I just think there's no question about that.
I mean,
and so there could be a chance that he has been thinking about this for a while. Hey, I'm here at UTEP, but let's get our degree and transfer to Missoula because that's where I should have been playing the whole time.
If you went to UTEP, though, Coulter, over under number of times a week, you're headed into Mexico.
Well, right. But I think that's the problem. I think that's why they're going to have problems having success because it's kind of like, okay, win, lose, draw, we could just go on vacation.
Yeah.
Winter conditioning, go to the beach.
Pro tortillas. That's what I know. I'm a big tortilla guy. All right, it's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Coulter, we wanted to talk a little bit here at the beginning. I mean, we don't it's not a big deal, but it's just sort of interesting. But the XFL has revealed today it's an 8-team league that the XFL is restarting here basically, and today they released their team names and logos. So I can just go through those quickly: the Dallas Renegades, Houston Roughnecks, Los Angeles Wildcats, New York Guardians, St. Louis Battlehawks, Seattle Dragons, Tampa Bay Vipers, and Washington Defenders. If you have a chance to go ahead and look at the logos, I mean, feel free to. They are as sort of uninteresting, to me anyway, as it gets. Here's the thing. Here's what I don't understand. Anytime there's a new logo or a new franchise or a new, thing out there, it seems like it's always met with just disdain. Like, people don't. The Vegas Golden Knights, like, they were one of the great stories. I still can't get over what they are. I just think it's just uninteresting, plain. I don't know. I understand why they went that route, and there's some explanations from the owner and his history, his past, and so forth that that he went with that, and that's fine. Like, he can do what he wants to do, but anytime you see expansion teams like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they go with the new big thing on the helmet, and it's just like, what are we doing? And it is so rare that an upgrade, and I'm not talking about just like an alternate uniform, and sometimes you can get into that and that can look cool or whatever, but when you change the logo or if there's a new logo or name introduced, people just hate it all the time. And I find it to be not, let's put it like this, I think finding a good name and logo is one of the actually really hard things to do. I mean, we experienced some of that with even trying to name this show. Like, what are we going to, what are you going to do? I think it's very hard to do well, but it's almost never accomplished to me. And the XFL, when they first came out, they wanted to do the edgy thing, and they had things like the Hitmen, right, and the Maniacs, and all kinds of bizarre things. And now they've just gone so sterile in the middle of the road on this thing. I don't really get it. This is what concerns me, frankly, about the Osprey. Like, at the end, if they're going to really go ahead and change their name. Now, first of all, we know that everybody is going to hate it. Everybody is going to hate it. But we also know that, over time, this stuff can kind of, people go, okay, all right, I get it. But people really genuinely like the Osprey. Like, they've grown to like that and appreciate that, even though the bird itself isn't all that much to write home about per se. The fact that you actually do have the birds there, nesting, doing the whole deal, and over the course of 20 years has sort of demarcated. I mean, it takes time to sort of cut out that niche. But it also just seems like, unquestionably, if the disposition is to like what you've got now, that the the backlash of this, the pendulum swing the other direction, is going to be nothing but dislike.
I'm the guy that cares the least about this kind of stuff. If it was up to me, there'd be no logos or alternate jerseys or any of that stuff.
You are just something else.
But I do think that
Go Penn State.
I do think that that Missoula itself has two of the great mascots in all of sports, period. The Montana Grizzlies and the Missoula Osprey are as good as it gets. I mean, the Osprey lives in the field. There's no situation in the world where you can get the Osprey nest in the field. You can watch the Osprey go fishing. It's unbelievable.
They tried it once with the Chattanooga Pit Vipers, but
not so good.
Didn't go that well.
Were you in Missoula? You had to have been when the University of Montana changed its colors.
Yes, I was.
Do you remember?
Hate it.
I mean, people were going crazy.
Hate it. Yeah. I remember many comments about the president's wife and her decision making and how does she have this kind of power and so forth and so on. And, at this point, I mean, first of all, I can't tell if it's actually changed a little bit of color over time, because it was like silver and cranberry was the word, right, that was being used when it was first out there. And now we're kind of shading towards maroon a little bit on that. Now, but I'm here to tell you to this very day, copper wins the day. I mean, there's just
especially Montana.
There's just no. That's it. That is the better uniform. That is the better color to have. Not in a throwback sense. That should be just the way you go. Okay, but it isn't. But I do think that people are. I like the jerseys. I like the color scheme as it is now, in with the silver and whatever the reddish color is, maroon or whatever. I think that looks good. I think it's sharp. I think it's fine. It's still not as good as the copper. I'm not throwing a fit about it, but it's also been a long-standing thing at this point now. So whatever. But when that stuff gets changed, yeah, it makes people, why we have these attachments to these things is a little bit unclear to me, but we do, and also why people think, well, we got to change it. We got to always be updating something. That I don't quite understand.
The thing that's so unclear to me is that when that change went down, I heard from people that were making the decisions, this is very common among college athletics. And I don't really have any memory of any other big-time program changing their color schemes. Oregon has shifted quite a bit because of just the proliferation of the options that they have. But as far as actually changing your school
green and
right,
yellow.
as far as changing your school colors, I have not heard of that anywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
Can you think of another example? Like, imagine if Texas just decided one day they're going to just be red instead of burnt orange. Like, there would be riots.
That's the conversation. Is in what school? And it might be Texas.
Texas. If Texas changed their colors, or if Michigan got rid of their helmets, burn it down.
How about this? Tennessee.
Oh man. Yep.
If Tennessee wasn't
North Carolina.
Yeah.
If North Carolina went to dark blue or purple instead of Tar Heel blue.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot for sure. But
I think Texas would be take the cake out of those. At Gus Tutel, if you have other suggestions, I'd be interested to hear as we think about this on the spot. At Gus Tutel, just hit me up and tell us what school, if they changed their colors, would, as Coulter says, they'd burn it down. They're rioting in the streets over this. It is Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. It is time for a Wing It Wednesday. So give us a call right now, 329-1899, 329-1899. We open it up to everybody around here. We got 3 questions for you. My questions are loosely based on the XFL and leagues around professional football that are not the NFL. So we'll ask some questions about that. Don't worry, it won't be personnel related, okay? I'm not going to ask you who was the quarterback for the, XFL team in when was that? Early 2000s? Anyway, just call 329-1899. We'll do some trivia with you right after this.
Now, the Montana Club's happy hour features BOGO beverages. Our expertly mixed cocktails, microbrews, domestics, and wine are buy one, get one free 7 days a week from 3 to 5:30. Stop in on Friday for Montini night. Sip on a top shelf martini for only $6, 5:30 to close. When you've worked hard all day and are ready to relax, the Montana Club has got you covered with BOGO happy hour 7 days a week, 3 to 5:30 on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com. Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Hey folks, Ryan Tutel here, and I'm with Josh from the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, if our listeners have been injured in an accident, how can you help?
We're here to help you after a car accident by negotiating with insurance companies, recovering lost wages if you have any, and even getting you into a rental car if you need one. Call us today for a free consultation, and we'll get started helping you right away.
If you need help, get a hold of the Advocates. Call Josh at 640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve an advocate.
This is Tom Skerritt for the Borgen Project. Each year, nearly 2 million children die from preventable diseases. Each day, 30,000 people die from hunger. 500 each hour are children. The Borgen Project is turning this around. We need your help. To learn more, go to BorgenProject.org. That's BORGEN project.org.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez. The Montana Grizzlies added a late addition to their defensive backfield with the season opener at South Dakota less than 2 weeks away. Tuesday, Sports Information confirmed that graduate transfer Keenan Foster. Keenan Allen, yeah, they brought in Keenan Allen. Keenan Foster, a 5'9", 195-pound former wide receiver at Texas El Paso, is going to come play cornerback. He caught 21 passes for 336 yards and 2 touchdowns last year at UTEP. He played under current Grizz wide receivers coach Brent Pease while he was there. The Mill Creek, Washington native spent his first collegiate season at Florida A&M, but then chose offers from Montana, Montana State, and Portland State coming out of high school.
I think Keenan Allen would probably play offense in Montana. Playing on the road for the 11th straight game. Played on the road for the 11th straight game because of unplayable conditions at their home field. Missoula Osprey dropped a 6-3 decision to Idaho Falls on Tuesday. One night after sweeping Great Falls in the Electric City, the Osprey lost to fall 4 games back of Billings for the second half lead in the Pioneer League North. Idaho Falls, who ripped through the first half to the North title, is just 7-15 in the second half.
The status of Ogren Park and Allegiance Field in Missoula still remains uncertain as the outfield is still suffering from soggy conditions. The Osprey had their 6-game homestand canceled. They are trying to come back and play beginning August 27th.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
You want some wings? To the Desperado Sports Tavern, the best wings in the city of Missoula. Give us a call, 329-1899. Call right now, 329-1899. Got some questions for you. They're gettable. Promise. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. It's Tutel Nuanez. It's good to be with all of you. Kurtz Polaris is at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. Online at kurtzpolaris.com. On Twitter, at Gus Tutel, at 1029 ESPN, and at Skyline Sports MT as well. Coulter, what are we working on Skyline Sports right now at SkylineSportsMT.com? Bunch of fall camp, but not fall camp now, just fall practice stuff?
Yeah, I couple different things. I've been having a little bit of a dilemma. Long story short, Andrew Houghton, who has appeared on this show as well as the Big Sky Breakdown, has been writing for me at Skyline Sports for the last 2 years. He's done a great job covering the Grizz. He landed a new gig at the Idaho State Journal in Pocatello. Congratulations to him. But he's covering the Bengals this fall football season, and it's always cool for a guy that you mentored to get that full-time beat writing gig at a newspaper. They're going to give him benefits and all the big boy things. So it was cool for him to be able to move over there. And then I tried to hire another young man to help me out, and he ended up getting an opportunity I think better suited his future goals on the sports information side of things rather than doing the journalism side of things. And I said, that's what you want to do, so go ahead and do it. But this last week was a little bit tough because we had a really busy week here at ESPN Radio, and we're kind of under the gun trying to get all our college game day stuff and all our Montana Football Hour stuff kind of smoothed over before we really hit the ground running with the full season. And so, I've been able to get it down to practice to talk to Coach Houck a couple times, but because this show is on right now, the Grizz are basically – the players will be available for interviews here in about 15 minutes, and we obviously can't go, so I really was just trying to find a stringer. We haven't been able to do it. But I also have been going through a little bit of a dilemma because just really been wanting to know how to try to produce written content that's not diluting the stuff we talk about on this show, and vice versa. You don't need to oversaturate it. If somebody wants to listen to it, they want to listen to it. If they want to read it, they want to read it. But is it really worth putting in the work to do both for the same thing? I don't know. But one thing I thought was a fun segment that we didn't spend much time on the other day was our sleepers for Grizz football. And so I took that a couple. I think I had named 4 guys on the Grizz, and you had a couple, and we each had a couple for the Bobcats as well. But I took that, and I'm extrapolating it out a little bit, and I'm doing my top 10 sleepers for the Grizz, because I do think there's a lot of guys that maybe are not getting the pub that they deserve, or maybe have a chance to really break out. And so that'll be a fun little piece. And it's media day.
Is Dante Olson on that?
I don't think anybody's sleeping on Dante.
Okay.
I was thinking about this today, though. I was walking around downtown seeing some clients, and stopped into Stockman's Bar, which, by the way, will be at Stockman's Bar next week for our Thursday show. This week we're at Locals on the corner there, Ryman and Broadway.
Yep.
Next week, Stockman's Bar, right downtown Missoula. But there's always a lot of guys that are really connected to the Grizz in there, and this is there's always a question that starts to kind of gain momentum in the conversational circles in Montana. The question now that I've been getting asked from both sides of the rivalry, and a lot of things about the Cat Grizz rivalry exhaust me and drive me crazy. I said this one of the days when I was by myself when you were gone. It drives me nuts when people are trolling on Twitter. Like, if you write a story about a Bobcat player and it's just about the kid, it's just about his journey or his injury or whatever, and then the other side of the rivalry, whether it's the Grizz or the Cats, they just rip the kid apart. Like, just come on, man. Like, let's stop doing that. I get that you root for your team or whatever, but to just rip a kid who you don't even know, who is, by the way, a kid who's just trying to get his education and play football, it's crazy to me. But anyways, one of the fun parts about it, though, is when I get from some of the rational fans or some of the people that treat the rivalry in the right way, some of the questions that you get that are pretty compelling. And the question that's floating around the stratosphere now is, who's better, Troy Anderson or Dante Olson? And I just got to thinking, I think there's no question Troy Anderson's a lot more diverse. I don't think Dante Olson could step back there and play quarterback.
No.
But I also have never really seen any player that can decleat a running back at the point of attack in the hole like Dante Olson. I mean, he kills people. He is an unbelievable player to watch. His trigger point and the way he reacts and how fast he is, I really think he's second to none in certain elements. I'm not saying he's the best Grizz linebacker ever in terms of his total body of work yet, but last year, I mean, he was must-see TV. every single week.
Yeah.
He would just be racking them up. I mean, you couldn't even believe. You'd get the halftime stat sheet, and this guy'd have a player of the week stat line at halftime. He'd have 12 tackles and a sack before the game was even halfway over. But that just got me to thinking, rather than debate that question and answer that question, I really think that those two young men, Troy Anderson and Dante Olson, are two of the best players that that at least I've gotten the pleasure to cover in Montana. I mean, they are spectacular to watch. And the thing that's so great about them is they deliver every time. I've never seen Troy Anderson or Dante Olson have a dud. They don't have a game where somebody like mitigates them and game plans for them and shuts them down. It's like, I mean, even North Dakota State, Cats did nothing. They got killed. Except for Troy Anderson rushed for 130 yards and scored a 60-yard touchdown like he always does. Dante Olson, no matter who they're playing, he's good for 15 tackles. And so it's really fun to watch those guys.
It is really fun, and I think you make a good point too, because in the Big Sky Conference, and even narrowing it down to just the state of Montana, there's always going to be some really good players, some maybe elite players, in the context. But each of these guys in their own respect, Troy Anderson and Dante Olson, takes it even to another level, beyond that. And the legends that will be spoken about Troy Anderson in 20 years, are serious. And frankly, the same for Dante Olson. It will be more for Troy Anderson because of the whole not moving to offense, moving to quarterback, and then to the other side, and the track stuff and all of that stuff. But when you talk about 151 tackles, I mean it's obnoxious. Like, I don't care if you're the only dude on the defense, you can't have 150 tackles. There's no way.
Like Bobby Houck said, is his mom keeping his stats?
Who's writing these up for you? Yeah, totally. But it is fun. It's incredibly fun and compelling to watch. I everything. I mean, I love all of this, man. I know that this has been like, you've done this a long time in this seat. And when I say this seat, I'm talking about in the state of Montana, getting going for another year, whatever. And look, I've been around this plenty. I mean, my whole life too, to an extent, in terms of as a guy who likes football, watching the college football teams in the state of Montana and so forth and so on. But it just never gets old to me, and it includes all of it. Had a fantasy football draft last weekend. We're going to be in a fantasy football league this weekend with our buddies over at ABC Fox Montana. Sean Rainey leading the charge on another fantasy. Then you get the NFL going into week 3 of the preseason. You start to look at the FBS schedule, and then we have something that others don't have. Is the football that actually matters the most to us is not any of that football. It's the state stuff. It's the Big Sky stuff, and that is such an interesting layer to this, because I think, if you're a fan of Alabama, like if you're in Tuscaloosa or if you're in Clemson or wherever, you're in Happy Valley, whatever it is, like, of course, to be in and with those teams and all of that is great fun. But we're watching all those teams too. Like, we are interested and are watching Saturday night football on, ABC and ESPN, et cetera, just like you are. They aren't watching any of this stuff. And so, I'm sorry, Tina, it's just going to be another 100 hours of football. It's what it is. Got to say my apologies ahead of time,
Speaking of great things about Missoula, should we talk a little bit about River City Roots Festival? Got some talking points. Just in terms of the logistics of it all.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we'll be at Locals tomorrow, so come see us.
Yep.
But remember starting at 2 p.m. tomorrow, between Ryman and Woody, you'll be closed as they set up the River City Roots. So if you're down there and need to cool off for a minute, come into Locals. They got good food. The cauliflower that they got down there is good stuff. Got the Wittenberg Brothers Hefeweizen, of course. We'll be buying open tab, buying the first $100 worth. So if you need to quench your thirst, if you're helping down there, if you're dancing down there, wherever you're doing, come see us. And remember, Friday early morning before 7 a.m., Main Street will be closed again between Higgins and Woody, and Ryman will be closed Broadway to Front. I mean, it's a great thing. There's going to be all sorts of downtown music, fun, food trucks, the works, and main guy Tommy will be down there too, conducting interviews and everything.
Interviews, right? Talking to
all
the
kinds of cool stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Quick break. On the other side, the Tour Championship. I'm not going to bore you with golf. I'm going to excite you with golf next.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
Alpine Touch has been providing you with the distinct seasonings you know and love for decades. Now, Alpine Touch has something to help you unleash the freshness of all the delicious flavors you need to spice up any meal. Check out Alpine Touch's new coarse grinds, unleashing the fresh taste of the garlic pepper or all-purpose seasonings to please any nose or taste bud. Coarse grinds can be purchased by the pound at retail locations around the state or at alpinetouch.com. Use the code ESPN10 at checkout to get 10% off any online order. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
The Polaris Factory Authorized Clearance is here. The world's best-selling off-road lineup is priced to move with financing as low as 3.99% and rebates up to $3,500. Live life wide open in a high-performance RZR. Tackle anything from mountains to mud holes on a legendary Sportsman ATV. Get more done with a hard-working Ranger or take on any task or trail in a versatile Polaris General. The best deals of the year are happening now. See Polaris.com or your Polaris dealer for rebates up to $3,500 and financing as low as 3.99% APR for 36 months during the Polaris Factory Authorized Clearance. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and Highway 83 in Sealy. Kurtz Polaris is now showcasing all of the new 2020 Polaris off-road vehicles. To be the first to get a great deal on brand new state-of-the-art Polaris vehicles at Kurtz Polaris. Online at KurtzPolaris.com. Rebates valid in U.S. through 9/30/19 on new 2015 through 2019 vehicles. Financing offer valid on 2015s through 2020s. Subject to credit approval. Offers vary by model. See dealer for details. Always wear a helmet. Never drink and ride.
Florence Coffee Company believes in bringing you the best this summer with real fruit puree and our cool and refreshing drinks, like a Bellini soda made with real fruit puree and soda water, or a matcha bliss smoothie with the intensity of matcha green tea blended with a variety of fruit flavors like strawberry, mixed berry, peach, mango, or banana. Stop by any of our locations across western Montana for a refreshing summer drink today.
Florence Coffee Company.
It happens. You're positive you put your bank card back in your wallet, but the next time you need it, it's missing. Avoid the panic and take control with the MyCard app and debit card from Farmers State Bank. Our app lets you control your debit card and securely turn it off right from your phone. Safe, secure, instant. MyCard is available only at Farmers State Bank. Ask about it at any of our 9 locations or learn more at farmersebank.com. Farmers State Bank, member FDIC.
Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
I'm into that. You bet. It's Tutel and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio.
So excited for golf. Can't wait.
Broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. Online at KurtzPolaris.com. Tommy, what exactly is your problem?
I don't have any idea how you can even sarcastically claim that you're going to excite the masses or anyone with golf.
You know, Tommy,
I'm at the edge of my seat here.
There's a lot of things that you don't understand about what it is that we do, and that's okay. Nobody judges you on this.
Tommy, your new show last night was great.
Thanks, Coulter. I appreciate that. Golf was not a part of it.
Tommy, have you ever golfed before?
Kind of. Ish. Sort of.
You should love golfing, man, because you know what you can do when you golf? Drink a couple of cold ones.
There is nothing that prevents me from doing that all of the time anyway.
There is no 4-hour activity that Tommy Evans can do.
That's true.
He will get a cell phone call that will ruin whatever 4-hour activity he is in the middle of. He has to go to Roswell, New Mexico, or Antarctica to escape the constant badgering of everybody at Missoula Broadcasting Company to come fix all of their stuff.
Tommy can watch Supersize Me on his phone while he's in line at McDonald's?
I have done this. Get backed up in the drive-thru. Get yourself woke about what's going on with the food items.
Let's talk a little golf, people. The Tour Championship is this week from the East Lake Country Club in Atlanta, Georgia, the home of golf in America, really. I think the original Bobby Jones down there, right, in Atlanta. In any case, 30 players have made it into this week's Tour Championship, which, if you're not following along at home, this is the third week of what is effectively the playoff. And each week, if you have enough FedEx Cup points, you can move on, but they cut players, who have not attained enough points. So these are the top 30 point getters over the course of the year, which is something like having the top 30 players, of the year in a tournament. Notably, who's not there? The winner of this tournament from last year, that'd be Tiger Woods, y'all, is not playing in this one. But this is something else how they've set this up, because the FedEx Cup is, this is the only time you're going to get a NASCAR analogy out of me, because it's the best I could do. But you can win the race, but not win the tournament, so to speak, the NASCAR stuff, the Sprint Cup or whatever it is. Same thing here. It used to be the situation where you accrued points over the course of the year, and even if you didn't win the final tournament of the year, you could still be the top points getter and therefore win the whole thing. Well, that's not happening this year. You ready for what's happening this year? This is great. They are taking everybody who's accrued the points. So far, the most points to this point was last week's winner at Medina in Justin Thomas. He's got the most FedEx Cup points on the year, so he's number one. So he's going to start on the number one tee tomorrow at 10 under par. Maybe I should start doing that. Maybe that's how I need to get into.
Well, if you played in tournaments with your accurate handicap, you'd be starting depending on who you were playing against, you'd be starting 20 under.
Yeah, it's great. So anyway, he is going to be with Patrick Cantlay, who is in the second place. He's going to be at 9 under. So here's the deal. You go in there, and they got all 30 guys staggered, starting at 10 under with Justin Thomas to even par. The last 5 golfers, 26 through 30, are all at even par. And it's first place 10 under, second place, I guess actually 8 under technically, not 9 under. Third is 7 under, fourth at 6 under, 5 at 5 under. Then 6 through 10 is where they start expanding it out. All of those guys are at 4 under. 11 through 15 are at 3 under, and so on. And it goes all the way to even par. But here's the thing. Now you can throw all the points out. Don't worry about the points. Just worry about the score. So if you are starting at even par, you are going to have to beat Justin Thomas by 10 strokes in the tournament to basically break even with him on the hole. But are you ready for this, Coulter? The winner of this tournament, who is then going to be, in virtue of winning the tournament championship tournament, the FedEx Cup winner, $15 million. $15 million to the one guy. Most of the purses, the entire purse on a PGA Tour is between $8 and $10 million.
Totally.
You're getting $15 million to you. $46 million is the purse for this. There are no cuts. There's only 30 guys. Last place is guaranteed $400,000.
Oh, gosh, sounds glorious.
But $15 million, bro. That's the biggest. This is the biggest payday in the history of professional golf.
$4 million a day to win that tournament.
It's pretty good.
It's unbelievable.
Good work if you can get it, and also, it's also good work if you can get it, and you're already 10 under par when you start your tournament tomorrow, like it is going to be for Justin Thomas. By the way, Justin Thomas, consequently, a 9-4 favorite to win it. Patrick Cantlay and Brooks Koepka, both 9-2. It is Brooks Koepka, by the way, who I think is in third place and will be at 7 under to start. So he will be 3 shots back of Justin Thomas when they take the tee tomorrow. Do you like this? Do you think that's a good way to do it? I love this because the points accrual
puts relevance to the regular season.
Nobody understands what the points are. You're out there, you got 42,000 points, and nobody understands. I mean, you understand, I guess how you get them, but every tournament's weighted differently, and you don't know where anybody stands as you're going. It's all these projections. Now you just go, okay, what's your score? What is your golf score? And we all know what's going on, like as viewers and as fans. So I like that aspect of it. What I don't know is if it's equitable, right? Like, let's say Justin Thomas wasn't just the guy who was number one, but actually had double the points of everybody else. Now he's only up 2 strokes after having put, a guaranteed win on the field coming into it from a points standpoint. That's the thing that I think you have to peg the score to. Not merely, if you fall 11 through 14, you're 3 under or whatever. I think it's got to be more representative of the point standings. And if a guy comes in and literally can't lose because he's so far ahead, well, he should be it. Now that kind of ruins your tournament if you start a guy at 25 under par and everybody knows he's going to win the thing. You can't very well do that. But I think it's an interesting give and take in that respect. But I think for a viewer, it's going to be really fun. And I think $15 million moves the needle when it comes to nerves.
Totally.
Like everybody talks about, the majors and all that kind of stuff. When you're out there playing for $15 million dang dollars, even as a tour professional, even as a, sponsored guy and all that kind of stuff, that matters.
Definitely. I think this also gives a little bit more continuity and intrigue to the concept of an actual quote-unquote regular season. Sometimes the PGA Tour just seems like a collection of tournaments that don't have anything to do with each other. And each individual major is sort of a little bit intertwined with there being 4 of them, and you can win this Grand Slam. But otherwise, if you just win the Bay Hill Invite and the Greater Milwaukee Open, they have nothing to do with each other. It's 2 wins. But this way, now you're kind of making your way towards a cohesive and ultimate goal, and when that ultimate goal has this sort of price tag on it too, it does. It makes it more intriguing.
Second place, $5 million.
Dang.
$5 million for second. There are 8 guys who are going to go $1 million or better in this tournament.
Usually in the majors, it's usually 3.
And in normal tournaments, it's 1.
Absolutely.
$1.1 million, something like that. So
still a crazy amount of money.
But here's the thing. It's like the difference between first and second is $10 million. $10 million. I mean, how about that for a playoff,
Standing over the putt, get a chance to win it. $10 million on the line.
Tutel Nuanez, hour number 1 in the books. Tommy, look at this clock. I mean, we are all over. We're doing great work today. Yeoman's work. Be right back. We're going to talk about the Green Bay Packers next.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at SelwayArmory.com. Hey folks, Ryan Tutel here, and I'm with Josh of the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, what are people left dealing with after an accident?
Well, quite a few things, actually. We see people that are in pain, they still need to get to work, they need to raise their kids, and now they have to take time to go see doctors and other healthcare providers. They're frustrated with working with the insurance companies and getting the runaround. We'll take on the burden of dealing with the insurance company so you can get the best settlement possible and get back to your life.
Find your advocate online at MontanaAdvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, ooh, pump it up. Pump it up.
When summer nights are a little long, Town Pump will wake you up. Swing into Town Pump on your way to work and grab a high brew 11-ounce coffee for you and a friend. Buy one, get one free. Stay hydrated in the Montana heat with Arrowhead 1 liters. Buy one, get one free at Town Pump.
Town Pump. Right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
Hey folks, Ryan Tutel here with Josh from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident and need help dealing with the insurance company, you should give The Advocates a call.
It doesn't cost anything at all to call, and I'd be happy to talk with you about your situation. You don't want to have to be dealing with contacting the insurance companies and setting up your claim. We can do that for you from start to finish. We'll take the hassle out of the process so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give Josh a call, 640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers, but you deserve an advocate.
Hey, Ryan Tutel here from Tutel Nuanez. We are on every weekday from 4 to 6 in the afternoon right here on 102.9 ESPN Radio, as you might already know. Very convenient for everybody traveling to and fro in the afternoons. We also know not everybody does that, so if you need to listen to us when we're not on the radio, we've got you covered there too, don't we, Coulter?
If you missed the show, you can always find it on every one of your favorite podcasting platforms, from iTunes to Spotify to the TuneIn Radio app. Or you can just go to 1029ESPN.com and click on the podcast tab.
The Tutel Nuanez podcast, available when you want it, wherever you are, however you consume your podcast. We're there for you. Sports from around the state of Montana and even around the nation, but relevant to Montana. The Tutel Nuanez podcast. Get it when you want it, where you want it.
Tutel Nuanez podcast, sponsored in part by the Wingate by Wyndham. Let the Wingate by Wyndham in Missoula make you feel at home, even when you're not.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Sports Center. The Montana Grizzlies added a late addition to their defensive backfield with the season opener in South Dakota less than 2 weeks away. Tuesday, Sports Information confirmed the graduate transfer of Keenan Foster, a 5'9", 165-pound former wide receiver at Texas El Paso. The speedster got 21 passes for 336 yards and 2 touchdowns, while also averaging 22.8 yards per punt return last year. He played under current Grizz wide receivers coach Brent Pease at UTEP. The Mill Creek, Washington native spent his first collegiate season at Florida A&M, which he chose over offers from Montana, Montana State, and Portland State coming out of high school.
Playing on the road for the 11th straight game because of unplayable conditions at their home field, the Missoula Osprey dropped a 6-3 decision to Idaho Falls on Tuesday. One night after sweeping Great Falls in the Electric City, the Osprey lost to fall 4 games back of Billings for the second half lead in the Pioneer League North. Idaho Falls, who ripped through the first half to the North title, is just 7-15 in the second half.
The status of Ogren Park Allegiance Field in Missoula remains uncertain, as the outfield is still suffering from soggy conditions that Major League Baseball has deemed unplayable. The Osprey had their 6-game homestand either canceled or moved to alternate locations. Missoula plays in Idaho Falls again tonight before 4 more games in Great Falls.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Moving to the country, I'm gonna eat a lot of peaches. I'm moving to the country, I'm gonna eat me a lot of peaches. I'm moving to the country, I'm gonna eat a lot of peaches. I'm moving to the country, I'm gonna eat a lot of peaches. Peaches come
The Green Bay Packers, they'll either win the Super Bowl or miss the playoffs. Hard to know. It is Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. If you missed anything in the first hour, feel free to listen in on the podcast. The podcast available on the TuneIn Radio app and on iTunes. Anywhere you get your podcasts, you can get the Tutel Nuanez podcast, so go listen to it there. It is brought to us by the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. If you'd like to call, 329-1899, the phone number. All guests join us via the Rankage Brothers RV phone line. Coulter, we continue our tour around the NFL by team. We're not doing all 32 teams, but we're doing teams that are sort of regionally relevant. We've done the Seattle Seahawks. We've done the Denver Broncos. We did the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is time today to do my team, the Green Bay Packers. And being the resident expert on the Green Bay Packers, I will say this. I got no clue what the Green Bay Packers are. None. And I guess that's a good thing, because I was convinced pretty early on last year that they were just bad. So not being convinced that they're bad at this moment is actually a step in the right direction, but I'm far from convinced that they're good. Matt LaFleur being the head coach is good insofar as he's not Mike McCarthy.
Certainly.
But it also feels just like following the trend for the sake of it. Now, they retain Mike Pettin as the defensive coordinator. I think that's a good move. I like Mike Pettin. I think he's a good coach. And I think he maintains continuity on the defensive side of the ball. I think he only was there for 1 year as the DC. That was last year. They were not very good defensively last year. But I think, first of all, they've upgraded their personnel defensively with Smith and Amos specifically. They've signed a couple of guys. I think their defensive line is actually a little more stout than what people think. But a second year in the system for the returners, I think, will go a long way to helping this defense be better. And particularly when you have an offensive-minded and first-time and young head coach coming in, let him worry about what he needs to worry about on the offensive side of the ball and let the defense kind of do its thing. Granted, he needs to oversee all of it at some level, but that part of it is sort of in place, so he doesn't have to come in and reinvent the wheel. So I think some new blood is a good thing from a coaching standpoint, but there is nothing to me that Matt LaFleur brings to the table in terms of resume, certainly not in terms of experience, that makes him that I'm excited about either. Like I'm not sitting here going, hey, we're going to watch what Green Bay's about to do, offensively. Watch the way that they're about to go about it, because I think they are shorthanded personnel-wise at the skill positions, hugely shorthanded, and I just have no idea what Matt LaFleur is actually going to be as a head coach, as a play caller, as a game planner, and frankly as a leader that you need to be as a head coach in the NFL. So that's where I'm at from that standpoint, and I'll get into some personnel, but you tell me first your thoughts there.
Well, the last year of the Packers was brutal. I mean, you hate the Vikings and the Bears, and you talk about it on the show daily during football season.
Hate them.
I don't hate the Packers, even though I'm a Vikings fan. And the number one reason I don't hate the Packers is because despite Aaron Rodgers just being such a crybaby all the time, he is one of my favorite players to watch play the game. Aside from when he's throwing it in the stands and pouting on the sidelines, when he's actually just playing football, he's one of my favorite players to watch that's ever played in the NFL. I think that in terms of just true natural talent, I really think he's one of the all-time greats. And I think that there's so much put on the quarterback position throughout all levels of football, but particularly in the NFL. And I think there was a brief moment in time where a guy like Ben Roethlisberger could win you the Super Bowl. Everybody needs help. That's why football is the ultimate team sport. But as far as a quarterback that can get hot, that can overcome every weakness on your team, whether it's a coach or a player or a depth issue or injuries or anything like that. I think there's only been a handful of guys in the last 25 years that can actually get hot enough to lead you. I think there was a brief moment in time when Roethlisberger was one of those guys. I think that Peyton Manning had a window where he was one of those guys. I think Tom Brady is still one of those guys. But right now in the NFL, I think there's only two players in the NFL where they can overcome every deficiency you could possibly have on your roster to win you a Super Bowl, and that's Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Drew Brees is still phenomenal, but I don't think he's quite at that level yet. Patrick Mahomes, or I should say Drew Brees is not quite at that level still. Mm-hmm. Patrick Mahomes is not quite at that level yet. Mahomes has the ceiling to do it. There's no question. He's just got, Patrick Mahomes is going to have to figure out how to win against the Patriots in the playoffs. That's going to be his number one thing if he wants to get over the top and be the guy that can be the guy that gets red hot to lead you there. But, all the other up-and-coming or solid quarterbacks, Carson Wentz, not there. Jared Goff, not there. Phillip Rivers, not there still.
No, I don't disagree with anything you've said.
Andrew Luck. What I'm saying is that I think that Aaron Rodgers has a 2-year window to still be the most impactful player in football. And I think that that's why it doesn't matter if it's Matt LaFleur or Mike Holmgren or Ryan Tutel coaching the Green Bay Packers, as long as it's not Mike McCarthy. I think that gives the Packers a chance to be a Super Bowl contender because I think that Rodgers is that good.
Yeah, I agree. Aaron Jones, I told you this stat before, but if you weren't with us, this is a mind blower. The all-time leader for yards per carry in a season by a rusher who had at least 200 yards or 200 rushes, so a 200 rush minimum, is Aaron Jones in the year of our Lord 2018. All time in the history of the NFL set the NFL record for yards per carry. I mean, that's stunning on a bad football team for a 5th-round pick out of, the University of Texas El Paso. Shout out. So I don't know what I don't know if that is repeatable. He was injured. He's coming into this camp a little bit banged up already. So I'm not saying that that's going to happen again, but there is potential there. Jamal Williams behind him. Davante Adams is a all-pro wide receiver. After him, there isn't a pro wide receiver on the roster. I mean, right now, Marquez Valdez-Scantling is the number 2.
Geronimo
Allison is behind him in theory on the depth chart, and then the kid out of University of Wisconsin Whitewater is also there. Jake Kumaro is there as the slot guy or whatever. They do have Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham is not close to what he was, but he was also particularly bad last year. I actually think he's going to be better than he was last year this year with another year in the system and year with Aaron Rodgers and all of that. But I don't think that Mercedes Lewis is behind him. I think they have a combined age of 97 at the tight end spot. So offensively, here's where they're in business offensively. It's on their offensive line. David Bakhtiari, Brian Bulaga, and Corey Linsley are 3 of the best tackles, and then the center in football. That's unbelievably important.
This thing all started going downhill when Bakhtiari and Beluga got hurt 2 years ago, and then Rodgers got hurt.
Yep.
And that was the first domino to all this malcontent that has just plagued Green Bay.
But defensively, Kenny Clark and Mike Daniels on the inside is good. Although Mike Daniels
I think he left. I think he went to the Lions.
So Kenny Clark, though, there on the inside, and Montrevious Adams being the other one is outstanding. But then here's what I really like is the secondary. Darnell Savage, Adrian Amos.
First time you said that for
ever.
a long time.
And then Jair Alexander and Kevin King, who was injured as well. But Kevin King, the great cornerback out of the University of Washington.
Yep.
I mean, they have the dudes to do it in the secondary.
Tremont Williams is still on the team too, right? He was good when he was healthy.
That's right. Right now, their biggest area of issue defensively is at their linebacking spot. I mean, they got Blake Martinez, being their number 1 guy. They do get Zadarius Smith to be like a pass rushing, hybrid linebacker, and they also drafted Rashawn Gary out of Michigan, who is sort of a high upside, low floor potential, a real hit and miss type of player. So we'll see what they've got, what they'll get out of that. They need to be an average defense.
Yes,
have to be. They can't be bad, which they have been bad. They need to be average. If they can be average, you're right. Aaron Rodgers can carry you the rest of the way. I do think Aaron Rodgers is going to be reinvigorated by having a new head coach, and I think in a lot of ways sort of running the show, if I may say. And I think that's good news. He, of course, needs to stay healthy. And so the fact that they play the Bears twice, that's kind of bad news. But that it's certainly possible. Let's go through, though, Coulter, the schedule and take a look at what we got with the Green Bay Packers, shall we? And you can give me your wins and losses for Green Bay, okay?
Okay.
Week 1, the first game of the NFL season is going to be played between the Green Bay Packers and the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field.
Loss.
Okay, there we go. Week 2.
What do you think?
Look, I mean, if I had to pick, it's a loss. I think they have a much better chance than a lot of people think they're going to have against Chicago in that game, though.
Depends what sort of surprises they pull out. I just think that's going to be a hard game to win because the Bears are good now.
They are, yes.
And they are good at home always. And I don't know, but if the Packers have some tricks up their sleeve, maybe. I just think that's a tough game. I mean, that's going to be, you're talking about Thursday night game. You're talking about it's going to be sold out. It's a rivalry game. I mean, I'm looking at the ESPN.
You think they're going to sell it out? I think they're going to sell out Soldier Field?
I love when you go to the schedule on ESPN.com and it says tickets as low as. And sometimes you're looking at like the Jets at Miami and it's like tickets as low as $29.
Yeah.
This says tickets as low as $356. It's already sold out.
Oh yeah, no. It's a major game, and it's going to be a great. I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be a really fun game. But no, I mean, there is no reason to think that Green Bay will win this game, except for the fact that Aaron Rodgers is their quarterback.
Yep. You just said that you just summed up every single pick we're going to make over the next 16 games.
Well, that's not true. There's a lot of games that they should win. Period. Like the second week, at home against the Minnesota Vikings.
Win.
Okay. Interesting, by the way, that you go Bears-Vikings to open up the season.
Front loaded.
A second game, a third game of the year. They go 3 straight in Lambeau Field. Second of those 3, Denver Broncos in Lambeau.
Win.
It's a win. The almost defending Super Bowl champions, Philadelphia Eagles.
Loss. I think that's a bad matchup for the Packers because the Eagles have the Eagles do it right as far as the amount of weapons that they have. They do not have one singular elite weapon, but they have like 9 guys who are pretty good.
That is a Thursday night game, by the way. It's so they'll only have like 5 days in between the Broncos game to the Eagles game. Obviously, the Eagles will also have that same amount of time, which is not much. And then they go on the road to the Dallas Cowboys.
Gosh, I think that the Cowboys have a chance to be this year's Steelers or Packers in the situation where the distractions and the unrest within the organization kills them. So I'm going to give the Packers a win in that one.
At home, Monday Night Football, the Detroit Lions.
Win.
At home, Oakland Raiders.
Win.
At the Kansas City Chiefs.
Loss.
We're halfway through, and the Green Bay Packers are 5-3. They're 5-3, 8 games into the season. I'm all right with that. At the Los Angeles Chargers.
That's a coin flip game. That's a tough game. I say win.
Okay. Carolina Panthers in Lambeau.
It's also a tough game. It's in Lambeau, so I'm saying win.
At San Francisco.
Win.
At the New York Giants.
Win.
I like how this is going. At home against the Washington Redskins.
Win.
At home against the Bears.
Win.
On the road at the Minnesota Vikings.
Loss.
That is. Do I have an 11-4? Oh, I missed one somewhere. They're either 12-4 or 11-5.
They're 11-5.
Okay.
Going into Detroit. They win against Detroit, so that makes them 11-5.
Oh, did I? Oh, week 17.
Yeah.
No, that makes them. If they win against Detroit, that's a 12-4 team, according to what you just told me.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably hedge my bet on
that's Sandy
at Los Angeles Chargers. Yeah. I think that's a coin flip game.
Here's the thing.
Yeah, I also think that it's going to be tough to win in San Francisco. I think the Niners are pretty good. Garoppolo was not great the other night, but the Niners have a ton of speed on defense.
The fact that they're playing the NFC East in their non-conference is great. I mean, there's one good team in that. Well, potentially 2 with Dallas.
Sure.
But, I mean, Washington and the Giants are both no good. And, they also play the AFC West. I think Denver. I don't know, man. We did the Broncos. We said the Broncos are not going to be very good. I think there's a good reason to think that they're going to, probably be a below average team. Their defense is loaded up, man, and they got Vic Fangio. I mean, they might just hammer people defensively. So I'm excited to see what the Denver Broncos are. But in any case, I mean,
regardless of the game by game, I think the Packers are a 10-11 win team.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think they're looking at this schedule is cause for a lot more optimism, especially when. But here's the thing: I mean, you're in a division with two other, not just good teams for your division, two other good teams for your conference.
Absolutely,
the Vikings and the Bears.
I think the Vikings and the Bears are both 10-11 win teams as well.
This is a 4-game season for all
the head-to-heads.
3 of those teams.
The head-to-heads for sure.
So, and the fact that
all 3 places are really tough to play. So the home team is going to be favored in all of the games.
Got to get wins at home.
So who steals one on the road? That's going to be the team that wins the division, probably.
What if Green Bay steals one the first game of the whole darn year on the 7th of September in Soldier Field?
They might. That Monday night football on December 23rd against the Vikings, though, we should probably start planning that party. Probably start making wagers because that could be the NFC North title game.
I like watching Monday Night Football and see kind of the new things that they come up with because every year there seems to be some, whether it's a new font for the names and numbers as they come across a new way to do things. Monday Night Football is just doing everything they can to push this thing forward. So first of all, Jason Witten being out with Booger McFarland now in the booth, I think is great. And I think the two of them are going to do really well in the call. They got rid of that. Everybody hated that little sideline truck that Booger was driving around in. I didn't have a big problem with that. It's okay with me, whatever. But what they have done now is they have put a camera in the top of the chain marker, for where a first down is. And so as plays are coming 10 yards down the field on an out route, they got it standing right there, and the guy running that thing is the de facto cameraman. They're also putting a camera with a microphone in an orange cone, like an end zone cone, at the base of that thing as well, and it moves around. During replay, they're pausing replays as it's going forward, but they are keeping the sound of the play, like including the crowd and everything, tied to what you're watching rather than normally you would on the replay you're just seeing it rather than hearing it as well. The audio adds such an element to this whole thing. So I'm impressed already with what Monday Night Football has gone out there and done in terms of the additional angles that you're going to get, which are good. They try to do the referee cam, but it always just was like you just wanted to throw up. You know what I mean? You're just bouncing around. It's like looking at all of your buddies. They think they got great videos with their GoPros, and it's just like I can't see anything. So, but these other cameras, this is great. So I'm pumped up about it. I think it's going to be a fun year on Monday Night Football myself.
I mean, I've always just tried to appreciate the fact that these games are broadcast on live TV and HD. I've never been much one to scrutinize the quality of the broadcast. I think they're almost all good. There are some announcers that drive me crazy, but other than that, I don't know. I never got the whole freak out over Monday Night Football last year either. I thought it was fine.
Yeah, I mean,
there's definitely like Tirico and John Gruden is the best that they've had in the last 10 years.
For sure.
But I think that Joe Tessitore is great, and I didn't really get why there was such scrutiny over Booger McFarland and his sideline chair. I thought it was fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sideline chair, the only thing that it did was took away it's hard to have a conversation when you're not in the room. You know what I mean?
Right.
And particularly the interplay between him and Witten was clearly like a rookie broadcaster up there. It was tough to pull off, and frankly, it didn't go well. But, you took a shot, didn't really work out. It's all right. They also got very little love in terms of the matchups that they – I mean, Monday Night Football used to be the marquee game. I think more and more it's kind of the Sunday night game. There's also some great Thursday night matchups that they're using. And the Monday night games – there were some great matchups, and then there were some matchups that we thought would be really good that turned out to be duds because of the way some teams' seasons went. But in terms, people have no clue the effort and the skill that goes into doing a professional national live sporting event. I mean, from every camera person to the folks in the truck doing the replays. I mean, I was talking about this before about SWX's coverage of the Missoula Osprey and the home Osprey games and how many cameras they have there, how many people they have working on that, how much production and pre-production goes into it. And, you know, when you watch it, it's an unbelievable quality for this level, but you can't imagine how much, work is going into pulling that thing off, and my goodness, at the Monday Night Football level, I mean, good luck. If you walked into that truck, you would short out. You would pass out because your mind would be spinning.
Yeah, the learning how to hate everything just to do it is it's one of the worst parts about our evolution as a society.
Ultimately, who's winning the NFC North to you?
I think the winner, whoever wins the head-to-heads between the Packers and the Bears.
If any of those teams get 3
I think that the Vikings will be in the mix all the way down the stretch, and they will find a way to go 9-7 and miss the playoffs, and then I will hate Kirk Cousins even more.
I mean, that sounds like a great prediction to me. And so the Bears and the Packers both make the postseason, one by winning the division, the other in virtue of the wild card.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, in the NFC, could the Eagles and Cowboys both make it out of the NFC East? Yes. I think it's more likely than not, though, that one of those teams isn't in the playoffs.
I think it's the Cowboys this year.
In the NFC South,
yeah.
there's real potential because you
3
have
playoff teams.
And I mean,
Tampa Bay is not there yet. You can buy the hype of the Bruce Arians, but they're not there yet.
Okay,
they might take a jump. They might be an 8-8 team, and that will have an influence on the whole rest of the NFC. I also think the Falcons might take a step back. Yeah. They could be like a little 8-8. I think the Panthers.
Nobody's talking about the Panthers.
Panthers pending health with the addition of Gerald McCoy, the presumed revitalization of Cam Newton. The Panthers could be in the mix. The Vikings have to be better. The Vikings and the Packers have to be better than the Panthers. That's what it's going to take for them to make the playoffs.
And the NFC West, it looks like a one-bid league, though I'm not ready to write off the Seattle Seahawks. But it seems like it's the Rams division, and then it's going to be an uphill swim to make a wild card for any of those other 3 teams. Though, if anyone's going to do it, it would be Seattle. But I do like 2 teams coming out of the NFC North. Which 2, I'm not really sure. But it's real possible.
And it could be 3.
Sets up well.
He could be 3.
I mean, yeah, it's not unprecedented.
I mean, I think the Vikings are better than the Seahawks.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's good reason
and I think that the Vikings are better than the Falcons.
I completely buy that.
And so then it really comes down to, I think that the Saints are going to win the South. I think that the Eagles are going to win the East. I think that the Rams are going to win the West. And I think that either the Bears or the Packers are going to win the North, and the other team's going to make the playoffs. So there's 5. So then it comes down to who's better: the Seahawks, the Vikings, the Panthers, the Cowboys.
But here's the other thing. Even if the Vikings are, in fact, the best team of that group of teams that you mentioned, and they may well be,
I don't think they are.
That's not that important, though.
Right.
It's how your schedule sets up. But all the schedules are going to have 85 or 90% overlap in the division.
Mm-hmm.
So we just did the Packers schedule. It's going to be very similar to what the Vikings schedule is. So I think they got a couple of good divisions to play against in the NFC North to collect some wins that you better be getting if you think that you're a playoff team.
I think the Seahawks are going to take a step back this year, and I think the Cowboys are going to be affected by the distractions and the noise. So then, to me, the final playoff spot in the NFC comes down to who's better, the Carolina Panthers or the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah,
and I think that there are a few players in the league where this is an enormous year for them. It's a put up or shut up year for them. I think one of those players is Kirk Cousins. I think one of those players is Aaron Rodgers. I think one of those players is Cam Newton. It's going to be very intriguing to see how those guys rise to the occasion. Cam Newton is one of the most fascinating X factors in the entire NFL because when Cam Newton is at his best, when he's healthy physically and mentally, and he's not being a crazy guy, it's hard to say he's not the most unstoppable offensive player in the league. He was the MVP on one of the great teams we've seen this decade. But then when he gets all volatile and gets down on himself and stuff starts going bad and teams start cheap shotting him and, guys are going down around him or you're trading his best receiver or whatever. Well, Greg Olsen breaks his foot. His security blanket's gone. He's so fragile mentally. And when he goes in the dumps, it's really bad. But I just think that the dichotomy of what he could be is so tremendous because he truly could be the MVP of the league if he puts it all together because he's so talented.
Yeah, he is like no one we've ever seen in terms of the physical talent, physical capability, I guess is what I should say.
Right.
But he is, I think he's pretty average in the skill category.
I don't know, man. It's interesting. Have you ever seen this All or Nothing series on Amazon Prime?
Oh, yeah. Love it.
So it's like Hard Knocks, but it's during the season.
For the year, yeah.
So they did the Carolina Panthers last year, and I've been watching this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cam Newton and the Panthers are only on national TV every, 2 times a year, 3 times a year, right, if they're lucky. And so we watch him a lot, and a lot of times Cam has risen to the occasion when the lights are the brightest, and a lot of times he's also faltered. And I think that has a big impact on what we think of him. When you're just watching the game by game on this All for Nothing, I mean, man, he is lights out. He is so sweet.
He is sweet. And I'm not saying, he's not an average quarterback. He's for sure top 10 and maybe better than that quarterback today.
Totally.
But what I'm saying is what he presents physically because of his ability to run people over, get the yard that you need, and get more than that. He's got a great arm.
Yeah.
Unbelievable arm. But I don't know where he's at in terms of reading the defenses compared to other NFL quarterbacks. I mean, you're talking about when you talk about a guy having average skill in that sense, when the sample size are the best to do it on earth, being average is elite. Well,
sure. I mean, he's not Drew Brees. He's not Aaron Rodgers. I get the point that you're making, but he is way better than people give him credit for in that aspect of the game too.
Maybe
I take him over everybody in the league besides Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, probably Phillip Rivers, Matt, and Andrew Luck.
Russell Wilson.
In terms of reading defenses, I would rather have Cam Newton than Russell Wilson every way across the board.
I mean, that's objectively false. No one is better than Russell Wilson in terms of the mentality of gamer and of positive emotion towards a victory.
Yeah, right. I just don't like guys like that. I like guys like Cam Newton a lot better than I like Russell Wilson.
The Debbie Downers. Okay.
No, I just like guys that wear their hearts on their sleeves, not whatever this facade that Russell Wilson's been perpetuating since he got in the league.
That's asinine. That is absolutely asinine.
I'm just trying to get you going. It's a coin flip for me between. I mean, Russell Wilson's great. If Russell Wilson never spoke again, I'd like him a lot better.
You're not alone in that camp.
And that's the biggest problem is that his teammates agree with me.
329-1899. Let's do a Wing It Wednesday. What are your questions, Coulter?
Got baseball. Got 2 contemporary baseball just about this season right here, right now. Okay. And I got 1 historical baseball one, which is actually one of the better questions I think I've come up with. This is a good question.
You want wings to the Desperado Sports Tavern? They're the best wings in the city of Missoula. You
call us.
Call 329-1899, 329-1899. Call right now. We'll do a Wing It Wednesday next. Hey, Coulter, it's August the 21st, my man. And we are in the heart of summer, but we are kind of starting to get into the back end of the heart of summer. And it is time to get your rounds in, people. This ain't Florida. It's not Arizona. You can't play golf here all the year round. You got to go golf now. And if you're going to go, no better time than the present to go to the Canyon River Golf Club in East Missoula. Canyon River is Missoula's premier golf club. It's one of the premier golf courses in the whole state of Montana. It has a brand new fleet. I've been telling you about this fleet of golf carts with the Shark Experience, the interactive touch screen
on the line.
on the set up your shots to know distances. Order food, for crying out loud, from the restaurant, from the Fox Den. You can get your surround sound music going. Fantasy football is in full swing. Guess what? Listen to the Sirius Satellite Fantasy Channel. Whatever you want to do on that thing. They also have fin cycles. You need to get around in quickly. Why don't you ride around on a motorcycle? That'll get the thing done. I've done that once this season. That is a great time. Really, really fun. And they got a fleet of them, a handful of fin cycles out there to ride around in instead of the golf cart, be on a motorcycle. That's a fun way to play golf. CanyonRiverGolfClub.com online. You can set tee times on the web. Save yourself a ton of money. They got all kinds of specials going on. The course is in perfect shape, and it is waiting for you. CanyonRiverGolfClub.com.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
Les Schwab is proud to introduce two of our best tires ever, just in time for summer. There's our exclusive Reputation, a high-mileage premium passenger tire we believe has the quietest, most comfortable ride ever. Or our exceptionally quiet and smooth all-season traction tire, the Open Range AT. Get up to $150 instant rebate on 4 backcountry MT or AT tires, or $50 on 4 road control passenger tires. Les Schwab Tires. Doing the right thing matters. Cannot be combined with other offers. Limited time. Terms and conditions apply. Details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
When you need a bank to help ramp up your savings strategy, look to your local bank, Opportunity Bank of Montana. Build confidence in your financial future when you create a rainy day cushion or take care of the nest egg you already have. Opportunity Bank offers options from basic savings to money market accounts and certificates with competitive rates. There's nothing like the feeling of progress, so let's get started today. Come see us at Opportunity Bank of Montana. OpportunityBank.com. Member FDIC.
Hey, friends and neighbors, it's Colter Nuanez from your favorite Tutel Nuanez sports talk show on ESPN 1029 in Missoula. I am coming up on my second anniversary with ESPN Missoula. You want to know the most surprising part about my immersion into the world of radio?
How great looking I am?
Well, actually, yes. The most surprising part of doing a radio show with Ryan is just how good looking Ryan thinks he is.
I am.
What I was going to say is that I'm surprised how much free stuff we give away on Tutel Nuanez.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't really be a surprise to anyone just how great looking I am, but it might be a surprise just how much free stuff we give away. Well, why? It's because we love all of you for helping to make Tutel Nuanez Missoula's #1 sports talk radio show and 1029 ESPN Missoula's #1 sports radio station.
And we're never going to stop giving you free stuff. We have plenty more giveaways coming throughout the summer, whether it's food or drink or golf or things that keep you having fun. Tutel Nuanez are here to make your summer rock. So keep it tuned right here. Tutel Nuanez every weekday, 4 to 6 p.m. on 1029 ESPN in Western Montana.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez, ESPN Sports Center. The Montana Grizzlies added a late addition to their defensive backfield with the season opener at South Dakota less than 2 weeks away. Tuesday, UM Sports Information confirmed the graduate transfer of Keenan Foster. Keenan Foster is 5'9", 165-pounder who played wide receiver at Texas El Paso. While he was there, he caught 21 passes for 336 yards and a couple of touchdowns. He was also a 22.8 yards per average punt returner. That's very good. He played under current Grizz wide receivers coach Brent Pease while at UTEP. He's originally from Mill Creek, Washington, and coming out of high school, he was recruited by Montana, Montana State, and Portland State.
Playing on the road for the 11th straight game because of unplayable conditions on their home field, the Missoula Osprey dropped a 6-3 decision to the Idaho Falls Chuckers on Tuesday. One night after sweeping Great Falls in the Electric City, the Osprey lost to fall 4 games back of Billings for the second half lead in the Pioneer League North. Idaho Falls, who ripped through the first half to the North title, is just 7-15 in the second half.
The status of Ogren Park Allegiance Field in Missoula remains uncertain as the outfield is still suffering from soggy conditions that Major League Baseball has deemed unplayable. The Osprey had their 6-game homestand either canceled or moved to alternate locations. They plan to be back in town Tuesday, the 27th.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Welcome back. Stu Till and the Nuanez. It's time for Wing It Wednesday. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway, Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. If you want to listen live and you're out of the market or it's just easier for you on your phone, your device, what have you, you go to the website, 1029ESPN.com. You listen live there. The stream brought to us by Opportunity Bank. Your local bank, your opportunity. It is time for a Wing It Wednesday and trying to get wings to the Desperado Sports Tavern. It's Kellen. Kellen, welcome into the show. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. How are you guys?
Doing great, Kellen. Thanks for asking. So here's the deal, my friend. We got 3 questions for you. If you get 2 of them right, you got yourself a basket of wings to the Desperado. If you get all 3, guess what? We're going to give you a shirt as well. If you need any help on one of these, Coulter is your lifeline on this. That sound all right to you?
That doesn't sound bad at all.
Boy, some chicken wings would really hit the spot. Tell me likey. Tell me what wingy.
Coulter just informed me that I said he's the lifeline. I'm the lifeline.
Yeah, now you're really, it's got a lot worse for you.
I'm turned around. You are in tough shape now, Kellen. I'm sorry that I'm on your team for your sake, but I still think that you got a shot here that we can pull this thing off together. So let's see what we got here. Question number 1, Coulter, what do we got?
All right, Kellen. Number 1, a pair of Los Angeles Stars lead the American League and the National League, respectively, in home runs. Give me one of those 2 players. They each have 42 home runs. They both play for the LA teams of the American and National Leagues. Name one of the 2 players that's leading their respective league in home runs.
I would say for the National League is Cody Bellinger.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
got that
good.
one.
Okay. So for the American League, Mike Trout.
Mike Trout, 42 home runs each side, both LA Stars. Very good.
Goodness, he asked for 1, he got 2. That is one question in the books in emphatic fashion. That's the 2-hand slam of trivia, right?
Yes, sir. Very good. Very good. Well 1 for 1. Still got your lifeline. Okay. Number 2. There are 3 teams in Major League Baseball right now that have more than 80 victories. Give me one of the 3 teams in the majors right now with more than 80 wins.
New York Yankees.
The New York Yankees is one. Gus, can you name the other 2?
I believe the Astros are up and over.
The 80. Astros, yep.
I was going to say that, and maybe the Dodgers.
The Dodgers.
Yeah,
very well done, boys.
Good.
2 for 2. Kellen's got himself some wings. Still got a lifeline.
Desperado to get all deep in sauce. Desperado, I'm into it.
All right. This next one's a good one.
Okay.
This is a good question.
Coulter's happy about this.
I'm happy about this one. I got this one on lock. Okay. There's been 27 players in the history of Major League Baseball to hit 500 home runs in their career, 500 or more home runs in their career. 27 guys. 9 of them never won an MVP award. Give me 2 of the 9 players with 500 or more career home runs that never won an MVP.
How about Jim Thome?
Jim Thome, the number 1 player on the list and never won the MVP, 612 home runs, his highest finish, 4th with the 2003 Philadelphia Phillies.
I would like to say Eddie Murray on that list.
Eddie Murray. Wow, good one. 504 home runs for Eddie Murray, his highest finish. 2nd, back-to-back years, 1982, 1983 for the Baltimore Orioles. Kellen with the clean sweep, doesn't need the lifelines. He's got wings, he's got a shirt, the whole thing.
You can be on my team anytime, Kellen. Excellently done by you, my friend. Give your information to Tommy there, and we'll get you all set up, okay?
All right. Thank you, guys.
Great. Thank you. Very well done.
7 left. See what you got.
No chance. No chance.
You got something.
No.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nada. Not one guess.
No.
500 career home runs, no MVPs. Nothing.
I mean, Griff.
Nope. Ken Griffey Jr. won 2 MVPs.
Bonds.
He won 7 MVPs, I think.
Cheater. Hank Aaron.
Nope, 3 MVPs.
I mean, you already told me that Jim Thome is the highest one to never win it, so I know that those guys are out.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Mark McGwire.
How about Pujols?
Nope, Pujols has multiple MVPs.
Okay.
Mark McGwire, never won an MVP.
Okay.
Rafael Palmeiro, never won an MVP.
That's a good. That is the obvious one. I mean, that right.
Manny Ramirez,
Manram,
never won an MVP. David Ortiz, never won an MVP.
Yeah, you got to find the DHs, right?
Eddie Matthews of the 1950s Milwaukee/Atlanta Braves.
That's the one I was missing.
Mel Ott for the New York Giants in the 40s. Gary Sheffield.
Good list, Coulter. Good question. Great job by Kellen. I got to tell you, so Jim Thome works for the MLB Network. Now, I don't know. You remember the show American Chopper? You know?
I do.
Loved the show American Chopper. Well, guess what? They've buried the hatchet or are attempting to bury the hatchet. It's Paul Jr. and Paul Sr., and they've restarted this show again. So we're talking about, what's it? I mean, I think the last season of American Chopper was probably a decade, maybe 15 years ago. But they've started, and I'm into it. I find the show really compelling for a lot of reasons, and plus the bikes are cool. But Paul, he's a little older now. Paul Sr., older, but he's a big dude, right? I mean, here you're talking about it. Paul Sr. is a hoss,
Oh, yeah.
and Paul Jr. isn't going to be mistaken for a small person anytime soon either. Okay, so you're sitting there like these are two pretty big guys, and the bikes and all that kind of stuff. So they have a deal with the MLB Network. Like they made like an MLB Network bike at some point. I think Junior made them a bike or something, and then they came through, because they were doing a second bike for something or another or whatever. Jim Thome came in, and these Paul Jr. and Paul Sr. look like children standing next to Jim Thome. I mean, I understand like our conception of baseball players is flawed because we think of basketball
Sargent,
players
line
and
one.
football players as the biggest dudes,
Totally.
right? But Jim Thome just dwarfed guys that you were otherwise going, well, that's a big guy right there. And it was stunning to go, oh, that's why he went ahead and yanked the ball out of the park every other time that he swung the bat. Let's go quickly. Don't have a ton of time, but we got to get our buddy in here. Passed him on the phone. Didn't even get to talk to him. Tucker Sargent. Hello, Tucker. What's going on?
Hey, if you need to get out for your last break, that's fine. I'm sure the commercial break won't be very long since you guys don't sell any ads during the day anyway, so... If you need to keep the clocks right, I can hang out. I got a few minutes till I get home.
Okay. Okay, fine. Now
Give us a tease. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, what are we talking about after this?
Oh, just the MVPs and their relevance in their particular sport versus other sports.
Perfect.
0168 for a free consultation or visit clarkforklaw.com. Again, 728-0168.
Hey everybody, here with my good friend Josh from the Advocates Injury Law Firm. Josh, if I've been in an accident, how much is it going to cost me to hire you?
Well, we take cases on a contingency fee. And what that means for you is that if you're hurt in an accident, we only get paid if you make a recovery. You'll never owe us anything out of pocket.
What about the call for a consultation?
That's not a problem. We don't charge anything for an initial consultation, so you have absolutely nothing to risk by calling us.
If you're injured in a car accident, call the Advocates, 640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com.
Alpine Touch has mastered keeping your taste buds happy by spicing up anything you throw on the grill this summer. Now, let Alpine Touch keep your mouth watering whenever you want their new sunflower shooters. Their new jumbo sunflower seeds seasoned with Alpine Touch's world-famous all-purpose seasonings. And Alpine Touch sunflower shooters will be available all summer at every Osprey baseball home game. Available at retail locations around the state and online at alpinetouch.com. Alpine Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
What do you get when you mix every NFL preseason game, cold beer, and the best wings in Missoula? The Desperado Sports Tavern. The Desperado is Missoula's premier Southside sports tavern. With 32 HD TVs, there's not a chance you'll miss a second of every NFL preseason game. It's time to start watching your favorite players and building your fantasy team at the Desperado. That's cold beer, NFL preseason, the best wings in Missoula, and you at the Desperado Sports Tavern, located on Russell, across from the Y.
Hello, Missoula. Ryan Tutel here from Tutel and Nuanez. At the beginning of 2019, Coulter came up with a new idea that has already grown into one of our most broad, in-depth, and successful segments. The ESPN Roundtable has been a highlight of the year for us so far.
From the standout seniors from the University of Montana men's Big Sky Conference Championship basketball team to NFL players with Montana ties to Grizz head coach Bobby Hauck to Montana State Athletic Director Leon Costello, we've covered a wide swath with these weekly long-form interviews.
Heck, we even had a real Irishman in the studio. Standout Grizz men's tennis player Oisin Shaffery was certainly one of our most entertaining subjects.
As we enter the summer months, we're going to keep the ESPN Roundtable rolling with a collection of premier guests.
So check out the ESPN Roundtable. The 30-minute segment airs at noon each Wednesday on Tutel and Nuanez at 5 p.m. on 102.9 ESPN Missoula and SWX Television every Thursday, and forevermore as part of the Big Sky Breakdown podcast series at SkylineSportsMT.com.
The ESPN Roundtable, presented by Paradise Falls, Missoula's coolest hotspot.
If it matters to Missoula, it matters to us. Ryan Tutel and Coulter Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio.
You so underrated. Something filling up my lungs. Every color
Welcome back to Tutel and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Our good friend Tucker Sargent standing by, in theory. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. If you missed anything in the show, you can listen on the podcast. It's available on the TuneIn Radio app, iTunes, and wherever you get your podcasts. It's there. Give it a listen. Subscribe, rate it, review it, all that stuff. We appreciate it. It's there thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Okay, Tucker, you set us up so nicely. You paid us so very many compliments. Not like we would try and keep the spot blocks low in order to pacify the listeners so that they continue to like us. You know, that wouldn't be a part of it at all. But you want to talk about the MVPs, and they matter or they don't matter?
Absolutely. And, Ryan, I just, being on the inside, I understand how this works.
Yes.
And it was good to see you out of the office today. Going out on the phone, I wasn't even offended because I figured you were out there selling ads. So you were doing your job.
I mean,
That's
I'm
good.
trying to just make a living here, just trying to hustle.
That's all any of us are trying to do, right? No, so
I don't know. I don't know. I haven't got there yet.
Coulter hasn't made a living.
I'm just trying to write.
Well, hey, man, you know what? At least you work at a place that'll give you a lot of gift cards for your to keep you fed, all right?
That's true.
No, just listening to the baseball one is just sort of silly. Like, is there any way for someone to win an MVP who is not either, like, the number one slugger or I guess a pitcher can, too. They can certainly do that.
They really don't, though.
Very rarely, though.
Pitchers, like, they...
Exactly. I mean, it's just like the MVP is sort of just like, who hit the best in baseball this year? Right. And if you look at the other sport, I mean, certainly football for all their major awards, just like, who's the best quarterback? Right? Who's going to do that? There are a few sports, I think, where any position player can stand out. If you look at hockey, I guess basketball certainly can. But basketball largely is just a scoring award. And soccer.
They're all offensive driven, though. I mean, and even in like baseball, for instance, you have like this overall MVP, but you have Golden Glove awards, right? It's like, well, that's
and Silver Slugger awards,
and that's what the defense. But the Silver Slugger is objective, right? It's whoever has the highest batting average or has
yes.
And so the defensive one is at least a selection where you're like, hey, this is the best defensive player, and there's some numbers to go with it or whatever. But you're right. I mean, it seems like, in baseball, there's a little bit of, doing it in multiple ways, defensively, offensively, etc. But even in the NFL, there is the defensive MVP, right? They're not even in the conversation for
and the only one that
overall.
the only one that I can think of that to me is like was truly they nailed it. Because a lot of the MVPs are just sort of like, it's sort of like a toss, like, this guy was pretty good this year. Like, he was, I guess, the best, but there was, like, usually 3 dudes around him in the NFL that could also be have an MVP season. But if you look back to the Broncos Super Bowl where Von Miller got the Super Bowl MVP,
right?
I mean, that to me was truly the actual, he was the most valuable player.
He was.
On that field. I mean, there is, and maybe it's because it was just a very dismal offensive Super Bowl, but it was because of Von Miller, and I was so happy to see that he was the recipient of it, because just watching the game, you're like, that's the best player out here.
No doubt.
And I feel like a lot of times that just the selection committee, whatever it is, if it's the journalists or whomever the committee is, get kind of lazy, and they're just looking for the easiest out, which is like, hey, let's look at the offensive numbers. And I think MVP really, in all sports, I mean, these are all team sports, should be more of an eye test than anything else. It's just hard to quantify that, and people aren't willing to go to, to use a baseball term, to bat for a guy who may be more valuable in any particular sport, whether or not, or I guess whether or not he has the statistics to back it up.
No doubt.
The thing that's killed me is ever since LeBron James won 4 out of 5 MVPs in the NBA, is that the writers now, they try to anoint whoever the MVP finalists are going to be by January, and then they basically decide a narrative that's going to be a 2-horse race down the stretch, and they basically eliminate every other guy from the conversation.
It's the same thing with the preseason Heisman. It's ridiculous.
Right, it's ridiculous. The thing I like about baseball more than any other sport, though, is the Baseball Writers Association of America takes this stuff more seriously, and they don't anoint guys as much. And there's been guys, like you're saying, Tucker, like a guy like Mookie Betts last year for the Boston Red Sox. He had good numbers, but they weren't the best numbers in the league. But he was definitively the best player with the best team in baseball in the Boston Red Sox. Jose Altuve the year before with the Houston Astros. Altuve is 5'7", and he's just a little slap hitter, but he was the heart and soul of that team. And so I think in baseball they're a little bit better at it, which is ironic considering baseball is so much more tangibly a statistical-based sport.
Tucker, appreciate the call, man. We are up against it, but you, as always, have brought pleasure and joy to the community. So thank you for doing it.
Hey, love you both. Enjoy your evening, fellas.
There you go. Tucker Sargent, you as well, my friend.
We give him a free pub. He was in here recording that earlier. Go see the new Hockey Lacrosse Wolf store. It's I know that it's beautiful, and they got all sorts of stuff going on. Yep. And he was trying to talk me into becoming a hockey player, and I said, Tucker, of all the sports out there, there's a lot of sports that I could excel in. There's a lot of sports that I might be bad in at first.
You still got time, Ryan. You still got time.
I said the one that will impact my life in a negative fashion more than any other sport is hockey. I will break my wrist within 3 minutes of being on the ice.
Yeah, I think maybe for the self-preservation, stay off the ice. Tomorrow, boys and girls, at Locals. Come down and see us. And on the corner, we're going to give away some more tickets to the Grizzly Oregon Duck football game. Have an open tab for you, some Widmer beers to give away. So come down, hang out, 4 to 6, Locals downtown on the corner of Ryman and Broadway. Have a lot of fun, and we'll look forward to being with all of you down there tomorrow. And, we'll talk a little bit more about the Osprey, the tickets, the redemption, what they're going to do for people who have tickets to the games that didn't happen. We will get into that a little bit as well. Till then, enjoy the elevator music. Tommy in a very, even mood today. See you tomorrow.
Garden City Paint and Glass in Missoula is like your paint doctor. They take the pain out of painting. Don't trust your home to anything less than professional PPG paints from Garden City Paint and Glass. Go to visualizecolors.com.